I'm Sophia, and I turned 42 last month. For most of my life, I've been the invisible one in my family, the one who never quite measured up. My brother Nathan, 2 years older, was always the golden child, brave, disciplined, destined for greatness. He became a Navy SEAL, the kind of hero people write books about, while I stumbled through life with a string of dead end jobs and failed dreams. At family gatherings, I was the afterthought, the one my parents barely mentioned while they beamed over Nathan's latest Medal of Honor or deployment story. I'd sit quietly, nursing a glass of cheap wine, pretending their indifference didn't sting. But it did. Every single time. Last weekend, I stood in the back of a crowded auditorium on a naval base, watching Nathan's promotion ceremony to captain. The place was packed with uniforms, medals glinting under the harsh lights, the air thick with pride and patriotism. I wore a simple navy dress I'd bought on clearance, feeling like I didn't belong among the polished spouses and stern-faced officers. My parents were up front, glowing as always, while I lingered near the exit, half hoping no one would notice me. I'd only come because Nathan had personally asked me to, though I couldn't shake the feeling it was out of pity rather than genuine want. Still, I showed up, clutching a small bouquet of flowers I'd bought for him, though I doubted he'd even see them. As the ceremony unfolded, I zoned out, lost in my usual spiral of self-doubt. Why was I even here? I hadn't spoken to Nathan in months, not really. Our conversations were always surface level. How's work? How's the weather? Never anything deeper. I wondered if he even knew how much it hurt to stand in his shadow, to be the sibling who never mattered. My thoughts were interrupted by a ripple of applause as Nathan strode to the stage, his posture ramrod straight, his face a mask of stoic pride. I clapped too, though my heart wasn't in it. I just wanted this to be over so I could slip out unnoticed, back to my quiet apartment and my quiet life. But then, something unexpected happened. A four-star general, a man whose presence commanded the room, stepped to the podium after Nathan's pinning. His voice boomed through the speakers, deep and authoritative, as he began recounting Nathan's career, his bravery, his sacrifices, the missions that saved lives. I shifted on my feet, preparing to tune out again, when the general's gaze suddenly swept the crowd. His eyes locked on me, of all people, standing awkwardly by the back wall. My stomach dropped. Why was he looking at me? I froze, clutching the bouquet tighter, certain I was imagining it. Today, we honor not just Captain Nathan Reed, but the family who stood by him through every trial, the general said, his voice softening just enough to hint at something personal. And I want to acknowledge someone who's been a quiet strength in his life, someone who might not even realize the impact she's had. My breath caught in my throat. There was no way he meant me. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone else step forward, but the general's eyes stayed fixed on mine. A murmur rippled through the crowd as heads turned, searching for who he was talking about. My cheeks burned with embarrassment, and I wanted nothing more than to disappear. He gestured subtly in my direction, and my heart raced so fast I thought I might pass out. What was happening? I hadn't done anything for Nathan, not really. I'd barely been a part of his life these past years. Was this some kind of mistake? The general's next words hit me like a freight train, unraveling everything I thought I knew about my place in this family. Sophia Reed, would you please come forward? He said, his tone carrying a weight I couldn't ignore. My legs felt like jelly as every eye in the room turned to me. Nathan, still standing at attention on stage, looked my way, and for the first time in years, I saw something in his expression I couldn't read. Was it surprise, regret, or something deeper? I took a shaky step forward, my mind screaming to run, to avoid whatever this was. What could this general possibly have to say about me, the family disappointment, in front of all these people? I stood at the back of the grand ballroom, my simple navy dress blending into the shadows of the polished oak walls. The air buzzed with the clink of champagne glasses and the low hum of self-important chatter. My parents, radiant in their tailored elegance, stood at the center of the room, basking in the glow of my sister Clara's promotion to colonel. She was the golden child, the decorated officer, her crisp uniform gleaming with medals that caught the light like tiny suns. I watched her laugh, her head thrown back, her confidence filling the space like a physical force. I tugged at the hem of my dress, feeling the worn fabric under my fingers, and wondered if anyone even noticed I was here. My parents hadn't glanced my way all evening, not once. Their eyes were fixed on Clara, their pride a tangible thing, wrapping her in a warmth I'd never felt. I was the younger sister, the quiet one, the one who didn't chase glory or crave the spotlight. I'd chosen a different path, teaching history at a small community college, piecing together stories of the past for students who barely stayed awake. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Yet here, in this room full of military elite, I was invisible. The weight of that truth pressed against my chest, heavy and familiar, like a bruise I'd stopped noticing. The speeches began, a parade of officers praising Clara's courage, her leadership, her unyielding dedication. I clapped when they clapped, my hands moving mechanically, my smile a practiced mask. I wondered if Clara even remembered I was here. We'd been close once, as kids, whispering secrets under blankets, promising to always have each other's backs. But time and ambition had carved a chasm between us. She climbed ranks. I stayed grounded. She was their daughter. I was just there. Then General Sullivan took the podium. His presence commanded the room, his silver hair catching the chandelier's light. His voice, deep and deliberate, carried the weight of decades in command. He spoke of duty, of sacrifice, of the rare few who embodied the military's highest ideals. My parents leaned forward, their faces glowing with anticipation. Clara stood straighter, her chin lifted, ready to be named. I shifted on my feet, my flats pinching, and considered slipping out to the balcony for air. But then Sullivan's gaze swept the room, and it stopped on me. Not Clara, not the shining star in her pressed uniform. Me. My breath caught, and I froze, certain I'd imagined it. The room seemed to tilt, the chatter fading into a distant hum. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, held mine, and for a moment I felt exposed, as if he could see every doubt, every quiet resentment I'd buried. My heart thudded, loud in my ears, and I gripped the edge of a table to steady myself. "Colonel Morgan," he said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. A murmur rippled through the crowd. My parents' smiles faltered, their heads turning slightly, confused. Clara's posture stiffened, her eyes narrowing as she followed Sullivan's gaze. To me, he was looking at me. The words hung in the air. Impossible. Wrong. I wasn't a colonel. I wasn't even military. I was just Emily, the invisible sister, the one who didn't belong here. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. My mind raced, scrambling for an explanation. Was this a mistake? A cruel joke? Sullivan's expression didn't waver. His eyes still locked on mine, steady and certain. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as every head turned toward me. Clara's face was a mask of shock, her lips parting as if to protest. My mother's hand flew to her chest, her eyes wide with something like disbelief. Or was it fear? My father's jaw tightened, his gaze darting between me and Clara, searching for answers I didn't have. I wanted to shrink, to disappear into the floor, but my feet were rooted, my body betraying me. Sullivan stepped down from the podium, his polished shoes clicking against the wood, and began walking toward me. Each step echoed in my chest, a drumbeat of dread and something else, something I couldn't name. What did he know about me that I didn't? What secret had been kept, and why was it unraveling now in front of everyone? The room was a mausoleum of expectation, the air thick with the weight of unspoken judgments. My father's voice, usually a steady drumbeat of authority, had just faltered mid-sentence, his pride in Nathan, my golden brother, snagging on something he couldn't reconcile. My mother's gasp sliced through the silence, sharp and involuntary, like a glass shattering on a tiled floor. Every pair of eyes swiveled to me, pinning me to my chair. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just Sophia, the disappointment, the shadow trailing behind Nathan's brilliance. I was Colonel Morgan, a title I'd clawed my way to, and the revelation hung in the room like a storm cloud, electric and unyielding. I sat straighter, my hands clasped tightly under the table, nails digging into my palms. The dining room, with its polished oak table and the faint scent of roasted lamb lingering from dinner, felt like a stage where I'd forgotten my lines. My family had always seen me as the quiet one, the one who stumbled through life while Nathan soared, valedictorian, star athlete, the son who could do no wrong. I'd spent years swallowing their pity, their polite smiles that never reached their eyes. But tonight, everything had shifted. The letter from the Department of Defense, tucked in my jacket pocket, had changed the script. Colonel Morgan. The words felt foreign, even to me. My father's fork hovered over his plate, his knuckles whitening around the handle. He was a man who thrived on control, a retired general who'd mapped out our lives with military precision. Nathan was his legacy, the son destined to carry the family name to greater heights. I was the afterthought, the daughter who'd chosen a path he didn't understand. Until now. His eyes, usually so certain, darted between me and the letter I'd slid across the table, its official seal gleaming under the chandelier's light. Sophia, he said, his voice low, almost a growl. Why didn't you tell us? I wanted to laugh, but it caught in my throat, bitter and sharp. Tell them. When had they ever asked? When had they ever looked past Nathan's trophies to see me? My mother's hand fluttered to her chest, her pearl necklace glinting as she leaned forward, her face a mix of shock and something softer. Guilt, maybe. My brother, sitting across from me, was uncharacteristically still, his usual smirk replaced by a frown that made him look younger, almost vulnerable. I didn't think it mattered, I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. You had Nathan, the perfect son. I was just me. The words landed like a grenade, and the silence that followed was deafening. My mother's eyes welled up, but she didn't speak. My father's jaw tightened, and I could see the gears turning in his mind, recalculating years of assumptions. Nathan shifted in his seat, his gaze dropping to his plate. For once, he wasn't the center of the universe, and I could feel the weight of that shift settling over him. I'd spent years building a life they didn't know about, missions I couldn't discuss, sacrifices they'd never understand. The title of colonel wasn't just a rank, it was a wall I'd built around myself, brick by brick, to prove I was more than their disappointment. But now, sitting here under their scrutiny, I felt exposed, like a wound reopened. Part of me wanted to revel in their shock, to let it burn away the years of being overlooked. But another part, the part that still craved their approval, ached for them to say something, anything, that would bridge the chasm between us. My father cleared his throat, his voice softer now, almost uncertain. Sophia, we didn't know, or didn't care. The question slipped out before I could stop it, raw and unfiltered. My mother flinched, and Nathan's head snapped up, his eyes meeting mine for the first time all evening. There was something there. Anger, maybe, or hurt. I couldn't tell. Before anyone could respond, the phone in the hallway rang, shrill and insistent. My mother started to rise, but I held up a hand, my heart pounding. I knew that ring. It wasn't a social call, not at this hour. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor, and every eye followed me as I moved toward the sound, the letter still burning a hole in my pocket. Whatever came next, I wasn't just Sophia anymore, but who I was to them. That was a question no one, not even me, could answer yet. The dining room was thick with the smell of my mother's pot roast, the kind she made when she wanted to anchor us all to the table, to her version of safety. It was a humid Virginia night, the kind where the air clung to your skin like a second shirt. My fork scraped against the plate, a small rebellion against the silence that followed my announcement. Annapolis, the Naval Academy. I'd said it with a steadiness I didn't feel, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. My father's laugh broke first, sharp and jagged, cutting through the tension like a knife. You? At Annapolis? He said, leaning back in his chair, his eyes glinting with something between amusement and disdain. You'll wash out in a week, kid. My mother didn't laugh. She set her fork down, deliberate, her lips pressing into a thin line. Sweetheart, she started, her voice soft but heavy, like she was laying bricks around me. It's a fine dream, but it's not practical. You're not built for that life. Why not teaching? Or nursing? Something stable. Her words weren't cruel, not like Dad's, but they stung deeper because they came from love. She saw me as fragile, a glass figurine to be kept on a shelf, not someone who could withstand the grind of a military academy. I sat there, 17, staring at my plate, the mashed potatoes blurring as my eyes burned. I wanted to shout, to tell them they were wrong, that I wasn't the soft kid they thought I was, but the words caught in my throat, tangled with doubt. What if they were right? What if I wasn't enough? I'd spent years building this image of myself. Tough, determined, the kid who ran 5 miles at dawn just to prove I could. But their voices, their certainty, made me feel small, like I was still the scrawny boy who cried when he lost at wrestling. I pushed my chair back, the scrape against the hardwood louder than I meant it to be. I'm going, I said, my voice low but steady. I already applied. I got in. That shut them up. My father's smirk faltered, and my mother's eyes widened, her hand frozen mid-reach for her water glass. I didn't wait for their response. I walked out, the screen door slamming behind me, and stood on the porch, letting the muggy air fill my lungs. The stars were faint, smothered by the haze, but I stared up anyway, trying to imagine myself in a crisp white uniform, standing tall. Could I do it? Could I really prove them wrong? The next morning I packed a bag. Not much, just a few changes of clothes, my running shoes, and the letter from Annapolis, creased from being folded and unfolded 100 times. I didn't tell them I was leaving for the prep program that day. They'd find out soon enough. The bus station was a 40-minute walk, and I took every step like it was a declaration. The pavement was still warm from the day, and my sneakers slapped against it, each step a promise to myself. I wasn't running away. I was running towards something. The bus smelled of diesel and stale coffee, its seats worn and sticky. I found a spot by the window, watching the town slip away. Past the diner where I'd worked summers, past the high school where I'd never quite fit in. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my mum. Please reconsider. We just want what's best. I didn't reply. I couldn't. If I let her words sink in, I'd turn back, and I'd never forgive myself. As the bus rolled north, the landscape changed. Fields gave way to highways, then to the sprawl of cities I'd only seen on TV. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, my reflection staring back at me. I looked tired, younger than I wanted to admit. Annapolis was waiting, a place that would either make me or break me. My father's laugh echoed in my head, and I clenched my fists. I'd show him. I'd show them all. But as the miles stretched on, a new fear crept in, cold and sharp. What if I wasn't just fighting their doubts, but my own? The bus lurched over a pothole, and my heart jumped. I wasn't ready, but I was going anyway. The blast was a thunderclap in my bones, a roar that swallowed the world. One moment I was running drills, sweat stinging my eyes, muscles burning with the good kind of ache. The next, the ground erupted, and I was weightless, flung like a rag doll through a haze of smoke and screams. When I hit the dirt, pain seared through my wrist, sharp and merciless, like a blade splitting bone. I lay there gasping, the sky spinning above me, my pulse hammering in my ears. My squad was shouting, their voices distant, muffled as if underwater. I tried to move, but my right wrist buckled, a sickening crunch echoing in my skull. Blood slicked my palm, and when I looked down, my hand dangled at an unnatural angle, useless. Training accidents happen, they told us. Live fire exercises carry risks. But nothing prepares you for the moment your body betrays you, when the thing you've built your life around, strength, control, discipline, crumbles in an instant. I was 24, a soldier with dreams of special forces, of proving I could outlast anyone. Now, I was a heap of dust and pain, staring at a future that might never come. They rushed me to the base hospital, where the medics' faces were grim, their voices clipped. Shattered radius, fractured ulna, ligaments torn like paper. Surgery was inevitable, they said, but recovery? A gamble. The doctor, a wiry man with tired eyes, didn't sugarcoat it. 6 months minimum, maybe a year, and even then, I might never regain full strength. My career, my purpose, hung by a thread. I lay in that sterile bed, the beep of monitors drilling into my head, and felt the weight of it all. Fear, anger, a creeping dread that I'd lost more than just bone. When my family arrived, their faces were a mirror of my own terror. My mother's eyes were red, her hands trembling as she gripped mine. My father, stoic as ever, muttered about other paths and new beginnings. They didn't say it outright, but I heard it in their pauses, their careful words. They thought I was done. They thought I'd quit. My brother, always the pragmatist, suggested I consider civilian life, maybe go back to school. Each word was a knife, twisting deeper. They meant well, but they didn't know me. Not the me who'd clawed through basic training, who'd pushed past exhaustion to prove I belonged. They saw a broken wrist. I saw a war I hadn't yet won. Then came Lieutenant Sarah Vega. She strode into my hospital room like a storm, her boots clicking on the tile, her eyes fierce and unyielding. Sarah was my squad leader, a woman who'd faced down worse than this and come out stronger. She didn't offer pity. Instead, she leaned close, her voice low and steady. "You're not done, Riley," she said. "This is just a detour. You've got fire in you, and I'm not letting you snuff it out." Her words hit like a spark in dry grass, igniting something deep inside me. For the first time since the explosion, I felt alive, like I could still fight. But the road ahead was brutal. Physical therapy started a week after surgery, and it was torture. Every movement sent pain screaming through my arm, and the therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Carla, pushed me harder than I thought possible. "Pain is progress," she'd say, her voice firm but kind. I hated her for it, but I clung to her words. At night, Alone in my barracks, I'd stare at my bandaged wrist, tracing the scars that were starting to form. Could I do this? Could I rebuild what was broken? Doubt was a shadow, always lurking, whispering that I'd never be whole again. Sarah visited often, her presence a lifeline. She'd sit by my bed, telling stories of her own battles, missions gone wrong, injuries that nearly broke her. "You don't win by avoiding pain," she said one night, her eyes glinting in the dim light. "You win by running straight through it." I wanted to believe her, but as the weeks dragged on, progress felt like a lie. My grip was weak, my range of motion pathetic. The other soldiers in my unit were moving forward, while I was stuck, a ghost of who I'd been. Then came the day Carla handed me a stress ball, small and unassuming. "Squeeze it," she said. I tried, and my hand shook, pain flaring like a warning. I managed one weak press before dropping it, tears burning my eyes. Carla didn't flinch. "Again," she said. I wanted to scream, to throw the ball across the room, but Sarah's voice echoed in my head. "You're not done." I picked it up, my fingers trembling. This was my fight now, and I wasn't ready to lose. I've always believed that life's hardest blows can either break you or forge you into something stronger. When I was 22, my body took a hit that nearly shattered me. A car accident left me with a fractured leg and a long, grueling recovery. I spent months in physical therapy, relearning how to walk, fighting through pain that seared with every step. My dreams of joining the military, of proving myself through physical strength, were crushed under the weight of that twisted metal. But as my body weakened, I discovered a different kind of power, one that lived in my mind. While confined to a wheelchair, then crutches, I turned to books and online courses. I stumbled into the world of cybersecurity and cryptology, almost by accident, drawn in by the puzzle-like nature of codes and systems. It felt like a battlefield I could actually fight on, one where my injuries didn't hold me back. I enrolled in a university program dedicating every sleepless night to mastering algorithms, hacking techniques, and data encryption. My bedroom became a war zone of textbooks, laptops, and empty coffee mugs. I wasn't just learning, I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece, into someone unbreakable. Years of hard work paid off when I graduated at the top of my class. I remember walking across that stage, my limp barely noticeable, a diploma in my hand that felt heavier than any medal I'd ever imagined. I'd done it. I'd taken the wreckage of my past and turned it into triumph. I couldn't wait to share this moment with my family, my parents, my older brother, the people who were supposed to be my foundation. I pictured their faces lighting up with pride, maybe even a rare hug from my stoic dad. I sent them invitations to the graduation ceremony, followed by phone calls and texts, practically begging them to be there. But the day came, and their seats stayed empty. No familiar faces in the crowd, no cheers when my name was called. My heart sank as I scanned the auditorium one last time, hoping against hope. After the ceremony, I checked my phone. Nothing. Not a single message, not even a missed call. Days later, a generic congratulatory card arrived in the mail, unsigned except for a scribbled "Mom and Dad" at the bottom. No personal note, no warmth, just a hollow gesture that felt like a slap in the face. My brother didn't even bother to send anything. I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at that card, feeling the weight of their indifference press down on me, harder than any physical pain I'd ever endured. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were busy. Maybe they didn't understand how much this meant to me. But deep down, I knew the truth. They'd never really seen me. Not as a child, not as a teenager fighting through injury, and certainly not now, as a man who'd clawed his way to the top. I was invisible to them, a footnote in their lives, while they poured their attention into my brother, the golden child who could do no wrong. The bitterness started to fester, a quiet poison seeping into my thoughts. I'd spent years rebuilding my body and mind, proving I was worth something, only to be met with this cold, empty silence. I tossed the card into a drawer, refusing to let their apathy define me. If they wouldn't celebrate my success, I'd find a way to make them notice. I landed a job at a prestigious tech firm, diving headfirst into the world of cybersecurity. My skills sharpened with every project, every late night decoding threats and protecting systems. But beneath the professional acclaim, a darker resolve began to form. I started digging into my family's lives, using the very tools I'd mastered to uncover their secrets. I told myself it was just curiosity at first, a way to understand why they'd pushed me away. But as I sifted through digital footprints, old emails, hidden transactions, forgotten social media accounts, I stumbled onto something that made my blood run cold. What I found wasn't just neglect. It was betrayal, buried deep in their past, and it was about to change everything I thought I knew about them. The secure line crackled in my ear, a faint hum that tethered me to a world I'd just left behind. I was still raw from the mission, dust in my throat, the ache of bruises blooming across my ribs. We'd pulled it off, my team and I, saving lives in a place I couldn't name, under orders I couldn't share. My hands trembled as I dialed my father's number, not from fear, but from something deeper, a need I couldn't shake, even after all these years. I wanted him to hear me, to know what I'd done, even if I could only hint at it. I wanted him to be proud. The phone rang twice before his voice cut through, sharp and familiar, like a blade I'd learned to brace for. "Hello," he said, distracted, the clink of a glass in the background. I pictured him in his study, surrounded by books he quoted but never seemed to feel. I took a breath, steadying myself against the weight of his indifference. "Dad, it's me," I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "I just got back. From work." The word felt flimsy, a flimsy stand-in for the chaos I'd navigated. Gunfire, coded transmissions, the split-second decisions that left my heart pounding even now. I couldn't tell him that, of course. Classified meant silence, even with him. "Work, huh?" he said, and I could hear the disinterest, the way he was already half turned away from the conversation. "Nathan called earlier. He's been promoted again. Regional manager now. Impressive, isn't it?" Nathan, my brother, the golden son who built his empire in boardrooms, not battlefields. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles whitening. "That's great for him," I said, forcing the words out, each one a stone in my throat. "I just thought I did something big today, Dad, something that mattered." He made a sound, a vague hum that wasn't quite listening. "You always do, don't you?" "Hold on, I've got another call." The line went silent, and I stood there, alone in a safe house that smelled of stale coffee and gun oil, staring at the receiver like it might somehow bridge the gap between us. It didn't. When he came back, I tried again, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "Lives were saved today, Dad. Because of me. I can't say much, but it was everything I've trained for." My voice cracked, betraying the hope I'd sworn I'd buried years ago. "That's good," he said, but it was rote, the kind of response you give a child showing you a drawing you don't understand. "Nathan's been working hard too, you know. He's got a vision. You should call him. Congratulate him." The words landed like a slap, sharp and stinging. Nathan. Always Nathan. I'd just walked through fire, carried the weight of lives on my shoulders, and still, I was invisible. I wanted to scream, To tell him I wasn't some desk jockey chasing titles, that I'd stared down death and won. But the words wouldn't come. They never did with him. "I've got to go," I said instead, my voice flat, the fight draining out of me. "Long day." "All right, take care," he said, and the line went dead. I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the silence. Something broke in me then. Not loud, not dramatic, but quiet, like a crack spreading through glass. I'd spent years chasing his approval, measuring myself against Nathan's shadow, but in that moment, I saw it clearly. He'd never see me, not the way I needed him to. I set the phone down, my hands steady now, and looked out the window at the city lights flickering in the distance. I was done begging for scraps of pride from a man who couldn't give them. I'd saved lives today, and that was enough. It had to be. But as I turned away, a new resolve settled in my chest, hard and unyielding. I'd prove my worth, not to him, but to myself, and I'd do it in a way that would shake the world. The safe house door creaked open behind me, and my team leader's voice cut through the dark. "We've got a problem," she said, her tone urgent. I turned, heart already racing, knowing whatever came next would test me again. I stood at the edge of the auditorium, my polished boots clicking softly against the hardwood floor as I adjusted my dress uniform. The air was thick with anticipation, the murmur of the crowd a dull roar in my ears. Nathan, my older brother, was about to be honored for his valor in Syria, a hero in the eyes of everyone here, including our family, who sat in the front row, beaming with pride. I could see Mom dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, Dad's chest puffed out like he'd fought the battle himself. My sister, Emily, whispered something to her husband, her smile wide and genuine. They hadn't noticed me yet, tucked away in the back, just another face in a sea of uniforms. And I was fine with that. I'd learned long ago that my place in this family was on the periphery, a shadow to Nathan's spotlight. For years, I'd been the afterthought. Nathan was the golden child, brave, charming, the soldier who could do no wrong. I enlisted too, desperate to carve my own path, but my role in military intelligence wasn't the kind of thing you bragged about at Sunday dinners. "Desk job," Dad would grunt, dismissing my work with a wave of his hand, while Nathan's combat stories got cheers and toasts. Mum would pat my arm, her pity worse than any insult. "You'll find your moment, sweetheart," she'd say, as if my career was some unfinished puzzle. Emily was kinder, but even she couldn't hide the awe in her eyes when Nathan came home with another medal. I swallowed the bitterness, buried it under years of duty, and kept my head down. But today, something was different. Today, I knew something they didn't. The ceremony began with the usual pomp, brass band blaring, flags unfurled, the weight of honor heavy in every gesture. General Sullivan, a man whose stern face I knew better from briefings than banquets, took the podium. His voice boomed through the speakers, recounting Nathan's mission in Syria, a harrowing tale of ambush and survival. My family hung on every word, their faces a mix of fear and pride as they relived his near-death escape. I watched Nathan on stage, his jaw tight, scars barely visible under the spotlight. He'd never told them how close he'd come to not making it back, but I knew. I'd been the one piecing together the intel that saved him. My heart pounded as General Sullivan paused, his gaze sweeping the room. I felt it then, a shift, like the air itself was holding its breath. "What many of you don't know," he said, his tone grave, "is that Captain Nathan Reed owes his life to an unsung hero, a member of our intelligence team whose work turned the tide that day." My stomach lurched. I hadn't expected this. I'd done my job in the shadows, never asking for recognition, never dreaming it would come like this. My hands clenched at my sides, the fabric of my uniform suddenly stifling. I wanted to slip out, to disappear before anyone connected the dots, but my feet were rooted to the floor. General Sullivan's eyes found mine, sharp and knowing, even from across the room. Sergeant First Class Lauren Reed, he announced, my name echoing through the auditorium like a gunshot. The crowd turned, hundreds of faces searching for me as a spotlight pinned me in place. My family's heads whipped around, confusion etched into every feature. Mum's tissue froze mid-air, Dad's proud posture faltered, and Emily's mouth fell open. Nathan, still on stage, stared at me, his expression unreadable. I felt exposed, raw, like a wound no one had noticed until now. That day in Syria, Sullivan continued, Sergeant Reed's team provided critical intelligence that located Captain Reed's unit under enemy fire. Her analysis of intercepted communications gave us the window to extract him before it was too late. Without her, we wouldn't be celebrating his valor today. The applause that followed was deafening, but all I could hear was the silence from my family's row. Their stunned faces burned into me, a mix of shock and something I couldn't name. Was it guilt? Disbelief? I'd spent years invisible to them, and now, under this glaring light, I felt more unseen than ever. I forced a small smile for the crowd, my chest tight with emotions I couldn't untangle. General Sullivan gestured for me to join Nathan on stage, and my legs moved on autopilot, each step heavier than the last. As I approached, Nathan's eyes locked onto mine, a storm brewing behind them. What was he thinking? Did he resent me for stealing this moment? Or was there something else? Something like gratitude? I didn't know, and the uncertainty gnawed at me as I took my place beside him, the weight of our family's gaze pinning me down. The air hung heavy with the scent of lilies and regret as I stepped out of the church, the echoes of the ceremony still ringing in my ears. My father stood waiting, his silhouette rigid against the fading light, hands stuffed deep in his coat pockets, like he was holding something back. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, locked onto mine the moment I crossed the threshold. The crowd dispersed around us, their murmurs fading into the dusk, but he didn't move. He just stared, as if he could peel back my skin and find the truth I'd buried for years. Why didn't you tell me? His voice was low, almost a growl, but it trembled at the edges, betraying something softer, something wounded. I stopped, my heels sinking slightly into the soft earth, and felt the weight of his question settle into my chest. He wasn't asking about the ceremony, or the eulogy I'd given for Mom, or even the way I'd stood at the podium, steady as stone while the rest of the family wept. No, he was asking about the secret I'd carried since I was 16, the one I'd let slip in a single, unguarded moment during my speech. I could still see her face in my mind. Mom, pale and fragile in her hospital bed, her hand gripping mine as she whispered words she thought would save me. She'd known. She'd always known. But Dad? He'd been blind, wrapped up in his own world of work and whiskey, too busy to notice the bruises I hid under long sleeves, or the way I flinched when he raised his voice. I'd protected him from the truth, not out of love, but because I knew he'd shatter if he saw it. And I wasn't wrong. I didn't tell you because you weren't there, I said, my voice sharper than I intended, each word a blade honed by years of silence. His face twitched, a flicker of guilt crossing his features before he masked it with that familiar stubbornness. You were never there, Dad. Not when it mattered. He took a step closer, his jaw tight, eyes searching mine like he could rewrite the past, if he just looked hard enough. That's not fair, he said, but his voice cracked, and I knew he didn't believe it. Not really. He'd missed too much. Missed me. Missed her, missed the slow unraveling of our family while he chased deadlines and drowned his failures in bourbon. I wanted to scream, to shake him until he understood, but instead, I just stood there, my hands trembling at my sides. The truth had slipped out during the eulogy, not because I'd planned it, but because I couldn't hold it in anymore. I'd spoken about Mom's strength, her quiet courage, and then without warning, the words had tumbled out. How she'd shielded me from the neighbor who'd cornered me in the garage, his hands too tight, his breath sour with beer. How she'd stayed up with me that night, promising it would never happen again. How she'd kept my secret, even from Dad, because she knew he couldn't handle it. The church had gone silent, every eye on me, but I'd only seen him, his face crumpling as the truth hit him like a fist. Now, standing in the churchyard, I watched him grapple with it. His mouth opened, then closed, like he was testing words he didn't know how to say. I would have done something, he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. If you'd told me, I would have. What? I cut him off, my voice rising despite myself. What would you have done, Dad? You didn't even notice when I stopped smiling. You didn't see the way I avoided that house, the way I checked the locks every night. You didn't see me. His eyes glistened, and for a moment I thought he might cry. But then he straightened, his shoulders squaring like he could rebuild the walls I'd just torn down. I'm here now, he said, as if that could erase the years between us. I want to fix this. I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the quiet. Fix it? Could he fix the nightmares that still woke me? The trust I'd never learned to give? I turned away, my heart pounding, and started toward the car. But his hand caught my arm, gentle but firm, and I froze. Please, he said, his voice breaking. Don't walk away. Not yet. I looked back at him, his face raw with a desperation I'd never seen before. And for the first time, I wondered if he could change, or if I'd already lost too much to let him try. The phone vibrated on my nightstand, a soft hum cutting through the stillness of the early morning. I squinted at the screen, the name Nathan glowing like a warning flare. 2 weeks had passed since our last conversation, a terse exchange that left me raw, his voice sharp with the same old arrogance. But this call felt different, even before I answered. The air in my room seemed heavier, as if the weight of our fractured history had settled into the walls. I pressed the phone to my ear, my voice cautious. Nathan's tone caught me off guard, soft, almost hesitant, stripped of its usual edge. He didn't dive into small talk or apologies. Instead, he asked if our father could come to my medal ceremony next month. The request landed like a stone in still water, rippling through years of silence between us. For the first time, I heard something new in his voice, humility, or maybe regret. It was faint, like a whisper of wind through a cracked window, but it was there. I stood frozen in my bedroom, the dawn light casting long shadows across the floor. My mind raced back to the last time Nathan and I stood in the same room. A Christmas dinner 3 years ago, his eyes cold, mine burning with unspoken accusations. He'd left early, claiming a work call, and I hadn't chased him. Why would I? He'd built a wall between us, brick by brick, with every missed call, every cancelled plan, every jab about my pointless pursuit of track. Now, this. A crack in that wall, but was it real? I told him I'd think about it. My words clipped, guarded. He didn't push, didn't argue, just a quiet, okay, before the line went dead. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the phone still warm in my hand. The medal ceremony was for the national championship I'd won last month, a race I'd run with every ounce of my soul, imagining Nathan's disapproval fueling each stride. He hadn't been there, hadn't called. Dad had, though, cheering from the stands, his voice hoarse with pride. But Nathan? He'd never cared about my victories, only his own. The idea of Dad at the ceremony wasn't the issue. He'd already promised to be there, his old track jacket pressed and ready. Nathan's request felt like something else, a gesture maybe, or a test. Did he want to be there too? He hadn't said so, but the question gnawed at me. Why now? Why this sudden shift? I wanted to believe in the softness I'd heard, but trust was a fragile thing, and ours had shattered long ago. I pulled on my running shoes, needing the rhythm of the pavement to clear my head. The morning air was crisp, the streets quiet except for the occasional chirp of a waking bird. Each step felt like a question. Could I let Nathan back in? Could I forgive the years of distance? My legs burned as I pushed harder, the familiar ache grounding me. I thought of Dad, caught between us like a weary mediator, his heart stretched thin by our stubbornness. He deserved better than this, a family whole, not fractured. By the time I looped back to my apartment, sweat-soaked and breathless, I still had no answers. The ceremony was weeks away, but it loomed like a deadline for something bigger. I pictured Nathan standing there, his tailored suit out of place among the track crowd, his eyes searching for mine. Would they hold the same old judgment, or something new? I wanted to call him back, to demand clarity, but fear held me back. What if this was another false start? Another moment where he'd pull away just as I reached out. I showered and dressed, the day unfolding around me, but Nathan's voice lingered. That crack in the wall, it could widen or it could collapse entirely. I thought of the medal, cold and heavy in its case, a symbol of everything I'd fought for. Could it mean something to him too? Or was this just another fleeting moment, a flicker of hope destined to fade? As I stepped outside, the sun now high, I felt the weight of his question pressing against me, demanding an answer I wasn't ready to give. The stage lights burned hotter than I expected, their glare pinning me in place like a specimen under glass. My dress blues felt stiff, the starched collar biting into my neck as the Admiral's voice boomed through the microphone, recounting my actions in Helmand Province. Words like valor and sacrifice echoed across the auditorium, but they felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. I stood rigid, hands clasped behind my back, staring past the sea of faces to the American flag draped at the far end. Its stars blurred as my pulse thrummed in my ears. My family sat in the front row. Mom's eyes were already red, her hands twisting a tissue into knots. Dad, ramrod straight in his old Marine uniform, stared ahead, his jaw tight. They hadn't spoken to me much since I got back stateside. Not about the deployment, not about the scars, not about the medal ceremony they'd flown in for. I didn't expect them to. Growing up, their expectations were clear. Dad wanted a son who followed his footsteps into the Corps, and Mom wanted me safe, far from war. I'd failed them both in different ways. The Admiral pinned the Navy Cross to my chest, the weight of it heavier than the Kevlar I'd worn overseas. The crowd clapped, a polite roar that swelled and faded like a wave. I forced a nod, my throat tight. As I stepped back, I caught Mom's gaze. Her tears weren't just pride. There was something rawer, something like guilt. Dad's hand twitched upward in a salute, sharp and formal, but his eyes held a flicker of something softer, something I hadn't seen since I was a kid. An apology, maybe. For what? I wasn't sure. I descended the stage, the medal cold against my chest, and the crowd's applause faded into a dull hum. Backstage, I slipped into a quiet corridor, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My boots echoed on the tile, each step pulling me further from the ceremony and closer to the memories I'd been dodging. Helmand wasn't just a place, it was a weight. A series of moments burned into me. The crack of gunfire, the suffocating dust, the weight of a Marine's body as I dragged him behind a crumbling wall. I'd acted on instinct, not heroism. The medal felt like a lie, a polished story that didn't match the chaos in my head. I leaned against the wall, the cool concrete grounding me. My fingers brushed the Navy cross, its edges sharp enough to cut. Why did it feel like a betrayal? I'd done my job, nothing more. But the citation said otherwise. Extraordinary heroism, it called it. I didn't feel extraordinary. I felt fractured, like the man who came back wasn't the one who'd left. The kid who'd enlisted to prove something to Dad was gone, replaced by someone who couldn't sleep without seeing faces he couldn't save. Mum's voice broke the silence, soft but piercing. She stood at the end of the corridor, her heels clicking as she approached. "You looked strong up there," she said, but her voice cracked. She reached out, then hesitated, her hand hovering like she was afraid to touch me. "We're so proud." Her words hung there, fragile, and I wanted to believe them. But pride didn't erase the years of silence, the letters she didn't write, the calls she didn't answer when I was overseas. I wanted to ask why, but the words stuck. Dad appeared behind her, his face unreadable. "You did good, son," he said, his voice low, like he was admitting something he didn't want to. He didn't hug me. Dad never hugged, but his hand rested on my shoulder for a moment, heavy with meaning I couldn't unpack. It was the closest we'd come to reconciliation in years, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. The corridor felt smaller now, their presence crowding my thoughts. I wanted to tell them about the real victory, the one the medal didn't touch, the quiet strength I'd found in surviving, in carrying the weight of loss without breaking. But how do you explain that to people who see you as a hero or a stranger, but never both? Mom's eyes searched mine, waiting for me to say something, anything. I opened my mouth, but a sharp sound cut through. A door slamming open, a voice calling my name, someone from the ceremony, probably wanting a photo or a handshake. I turned toward the sound, my heart pounding, unsure if I was ready to face what came next. I stood on the platform, the weight of the Navy Cross heavy in my hands, its cold metal pressing into my palms like a promise kept. The crowd's applause roared, a tidal wave of sound, but it was Captain Vega's smile, sharp and knowing, that cut through the noise. Her eyes locked on mine, not with pride, but with something deeper, something that said she saw me, the real me, not just the decorated pilot. I'd spent years chasing this moment, clawing my way through dogfights and doubt, but now, standing here, I realized it wasn't their approval I'd been after. It was freedom, my freedom. The sky had always been my escape, my rebellion against gravity, against expectations, against the voices that told me I wasn't enough. And now, it was mine to conquer. The ceremony faded into a blur of handshakes and camera flashes. I moved through it mechanically, my dress blues stiff against my skin, my smile a practiced mask. Inside, my thoughts churned. Every mission, every near miss, every sleepless night plotting coordinates in my head, it had all led to this. But what was this? A medal? A title? The crowd saw a hero, but I felt like a ghost, haunting my own victory. Vega's words from years ago echoed in my mind. The sky doesn't care who you are. It only cares if you can fly. She'd been right. The sky was the one place I could be whole, where the scars of my past didn't weigh me down. As the crowd thinned, I slipped away, needing air, needing space. The base was quiet now, the runway stretching out under the late afternoon sun, like a ribbon of possibility. I walked toward my jet, its sleek lines glinting in the light. The F-38 Raptor, my second skin. I ran my hand along its wing, feeling the familiar hum of purpose. Up there, I wasn't Lieutenant Commander Elise Merrow, daughter of a broken home, or the kid who'd been told she'd never make it. I was just me, untethered, alive. But standing there, the weight of the medal still in my hand, I felt a tug of something new. Not doubt, not fear, but a question. What now? I'd fought for this moment, but the fight had defined me. Without it, who was I? The sky was mine, sure, but what did that mean when the war was over? When the mission stopped coming? I'd spent so long running toward the next target, the next rank, that I'd never stopped to ask where I was going. A shadow fell across the tarmac. Vega. She stood a few feet away, her captain's bars catching the light. You look like you're about to bolt, she said, her voice low but carrying that edge that always made me straighten up. Didn't expect you to notice, I replied, trying to keep my tone light. But her eyes, those damn eyes, saw right through me. You don't get to hide any more, Elise. Not after today. She stepped closer, her boots clicking on the pavement. That medal? It's not a finish line, it's a door. Question is, are you ready to walk through it? I wanted to laugh it off, to say something cocky like I always did, but the words stuck in my throat. She was right. Again. The Navy Cross wasn't just a reward. It was a challenge. A dare to be more than a pilot. More than a fighter. But more what? I'd spent so long proving myself. To my instructors, my squad, my ghosts, that I didn't know how to stop. How to just be. Get some rest, Vega said, turning to leave. Tomorrow's briefing is at 600. Something big's coming. She paused, glancing back. And Elise, don't let that medal weigh you down. I watched her go, her silhouette fading into the dusk. The runway stretched out before me, endless and quiet. Tomorrow, something big. My pulse quickened, not with fear, but with hunger. The sky was calling again, but this time it felt different. Like it wasn't just freedom waiting up there, but something I hadn't dared to name. I gripped the medal tighter, my reflection glinting faintly in its surface. Whatever was coming, I'd meet it head on. But tonight, the question lingered. Was I ready for what lay beyond the horizon?